two recent events that it seems to me summarise well the potency of the rise of the digital economy and what happens to those that stand in its way. First, the political upheaval in much of the Arab world and the demise of the Red Group, and second, the demise of the Red Group's Borders and Agnes and Robertson book chains. Different examples of different importance, but closely connected nevertheless. The causes of the political earthquakes in Arab countries are complex. They are influenced by many factors which differ across countries. But it is widely agreed that a factor in the popular uprisings against the old dictators has been the influence of new media, like Al Jazeera's news service, mobile devices, and social media such as Twitter and Facebook. These have stripped the political elite's ability to control the news. They've empowered people to bypass the Ministry of Truth, to paraphrase George Orwell. They've allowed millions of citizens to record and broadcast what's going on and to mobilise in an almost unprecedented scale. In watching these amazing events unfold, particularly in Egypt, where regular people bent, in Barack Obama's words, the arc of history, through peaceful protest, I felt a sense of awe at what they have achieved, hope mixed with some trepidation for where they may go, and curiosity and excitement at the role played by digital media in dispatching an ageing and unloved leader. And I was reminded of what one of Australia's most respected journalists said to me a couple of years ago. She said she thought that Twitter was one of the most profoundly impactful things that had happened to journalism in a very long time. I must admit that my first thought was that she was engaging in a bit of journalistic hyperbole, something, of course, that CEOs never do. But she persisted in the face of my slight scepticism. She made the point that Twitter is easy to use, widely available, allows you to build up followers and communities of interest, and allows for a pithy but powerful form of reportage by everyday citizens. She was right. Stephen Fry made a similar point when he was last in Sydney about the development of the printing press and the penny post in the 18th century Britain. These made it possible to create and distribute the cheap newspapers and pamphlets that were such a new feature of that day. With typical Fry sharpness, he pointed out that those newspapers and pamphlets, which made possible the growth of democratic sentiment and reform at the time, had names that were very like Twitter. He said they were called things like The Rambler, The Idler, The Tatler, Spectator. It was all very trivial. They weren't called earnest debate. They were not called serious penetration of issues or the philosopher. He continued, and by such strange and curious byways, huge upheavals in the way people relate, the way people respond to each other, and the political ideas and the way they push those ideas forward can be promulgated. And it isn't anything you could ever predict. It isn't anything you can actually control. That ends his quote, and he's absolutely right too. The demise of Borders and Agnes and Robertson, while not anywhere near as significant as what is happening in the Middle East, does also provide a stark example of the powerful effects of the digital economy on consumer behaviour and business models. Like many of you, I'm sure, I used to have a favourite local bookstore where I bought all my books. I'd go to Nicholas Pounder's bookshop in Darlinghurst. I'd have a coffee at one of the places on Victoria Street and then wander down to Nicholas's shop. I liked it because it had a really terrific range of books, and Nicholas was such a marvellous curator and recommender of books he thought I'd like. When some of the bigger chains like Borders opened, I'd occasionally go there for the breadth and depth of their offering, while feeling slightly disloyal to my local bookshop. Nicholas, in any case, moved into antiquarian books, and we developed a separate relationship through that. But the big stores like Borders, despite all their IT systems and extensive range and backlist, never managed to personalise what they offered in the way my friend Nicholas did. The thing about Amazon, of course, is that it does both. It offers consumers a huge choice of books, I mean really unparalleled choice, and a highly personalised service through its recommendation engines. It prices lower than in Australia, and while no one person could ever replace Nicholas's knowledge of books, the wisdom of crowds on which Amazon's recommendation engines draw, and its knowledge of what you've ordered previously, offers a truly startlingly personalised service. A recommendation will pop up and you'll invariably think, wow, that looks good. And you'll order it with the click of the mouse. And when I order the Kindle or iPad version of the book, it's delivered with a whisper and at breathtaking speed to my tablet. There are a number of factors people posit for the Red Group's financial troubles: indifferent management, the rise of the Australian dollar, and the failure of the federal government to allow parallel imports. But as with my earlier example, it's clear that rapidly changing consumer habits brought on by the digital economy played a significant part in it. Like me, many Australians now order their books online, and increasingly they have them delivered to their slate. And while the loss of jobs and favourite haunts can be sad, and for those too old to begin again, distressing, it's also a fact that the digital economy is creating thousands of jobs and virtual retail stores to replace them. History is creative and destructive, as we can see. At Foxtel, like all right-thinking media companies, we think that something that can bring down dictators and 100-year-old book chains is worth taking very seriously indeed. What then does the rise of the digital economy mean for a company like Foxtel? There are those who have said that television's days are numbered because of the internet. For instance, the well-known futurist George Gilder said in the early 1990s that by the end of the 20th century, traditional television would be dead because the internet would enable consumers to track down programs that catered to their exact needs. But to paraphrase Mark Twain, reports of television's death have been greatly exaggerated. In fact, more than this, what we have seen over the last couple of decades is not only the rebirth of television, but rather multiple births across all sorts of screens. And why? Well, the first thing to remember is that when Bruce Gyngell introduced television to Australians in 1956, with that now immortal line, "Good evening and welcome to television," he was introducing us all to the most powerful medium ever created. What is noticeable about television since then is the way it has endured and prospered. In fact, our killer app is, well, television. The figures tell the story. As this slide shows, we are currently seeing record television viewing numbers around the world. In Australia, people spend on average between 22 and 23 hours a week watching television. In the US, this figure stands at 34 hours, and in the UK, 28 hours per person per week. So that even as internet usage is increasing, we are not seeing any erosion in television viewing figures. One of the reasons for this is that television caters for a deep human need to share stories. Whether you live in the farthest recesses of the Amazon, the wide expanse of the Australian outback, or one of our capital cities, people like sharing stories. As one of my colleagues at BCIB put it, people want to watch the next big thing when everyone else is watching it. Similarly, 111 million Americans tuned in for this year's Super Bowl earlier this month, or in fact in February. Now clearly this is changing many shows, where time shifting is increasingly popular, although in our view there will always be certain events like live sport that people want to watch together. Television is also getting better and better. Compare the sports coverage in the early 1970s with its limited choice of sporting events, limited number of cameras and ropey resolution, with the broad range of sports choice we offer today. And we offer it in glorious high definition with beautifully crisp, clear pictures, as well as with replay features, multiple camera angles, and applications that provide you with immediate access to stats and information. Or look at some early television series and compare them with shows like Mad Men, The Wire, The Sopranos, John Adams, or local series like Love My Way, Tangled and Satisfaction. What we offer today is so much better, and consumers recognise this and are sticking with us. Finally, television, and in particular subscription television, has continued to prosper because it has been remarkably good at adapting and in many cases driving the changes brought on by the digital economy. There are a wide range of macro themes used to explain what is happening. Everything is local and global and mobile and social, and people are treasure hunting, and there is a snowstorm of choice. All of that is true, but the way I like to think about it is that we are seeing one of the most profound shifts in power in our collective lifetime, from producers to consumers. And subscription television has been very good at going with this change and driving it. For instance, in the late 1990s, the US cable companies introduced the personal digital recorder, which catered perfectly to the rapid evolution in consumer tastes, where people started demanding the shows they want at a time that suited them. Similarly, US subscription television companies have been pioneers in offering TV everywhere or television across multiple screens. And Foxtel? Well, like our subscription television colleagues in other countries, we take the view that you must make the trend your friend. The great mistake companies can make is to look at the world through the prism they find most comfortable, or to put it another way, to fall victim to corporate hubris. The way to avoid this is to listen very carefully to consumers, to innovate and to provide them with what they want. We've been similarly responsive to Australians' rapid take-up of broadband. For us, broadband represents two really important opportunities. First, it allows us to expand out the choice, control and personalisation we offer Australians through our core offering. Late last year, we started to light up the internet connection into around 850,000 deployed IQ boxes that already have an internet modem included in them. Foxtel On Demand, as the service is called, offers customers access to thousands of TV episodes and hundreds of movies. The second opportunity broadband offers us is that it's an effective and lower cost distribution mechanism. This is allowing us to offer new and more flexible packages to market segments not traditionally open to full Foxtel. This is why late last year we launched Foxtel on Xbox 360, as Malcolm mentioned, where we provide 30 channels of Foxtel over the internet directly to your television set via Microsoft's remarkable Xbox 360 console. We also signed an agreement with Telstra in February to provide a terrific offering to Telstra's T-Box. There, over 30 channels will also be delivered via broadband direct to the television via that T-Box. And if you're a Big Pond customer, all of these broadband offerings, Foxtel On Demand, Foxtel on Xbox 360 and Foxtel on T-Box, are zero. Future lies in offering Australians what they want, and our research and our observation of consumer behaviour, along with a little crystal ball gazing, tells us that people will want interoperability across three screens. The three screens of television, personal computers, slates, tablets, laptops, and of course mobile phones are going to become ubiquitous. Mum and Dad want to be able to watch, say, half of Inception in the living room and then pick it up where they left off in the bedroom where they mightn't have a connection to Foxtel. They'll watch it on their iPad or some other tablet device. People will want even greater personalisation and interactive engagement with their television. They'll want to be able to access what they want to watch in simple and intuitive ways. And they'll want to watch it, what they want, anywhere and at any time with a seamless degree of integration between all of the devices. Easy to say, much harder to execute. But executed we're currently doing, because we've done it consistently over the last 15 years. It's the heartland of our DNA. Finally, I can't follow Minister Conroy without saying a few things about regulation, particularly in the context of the digital economy. I don't think there are many people in this room who would disagree with the proposition that many of our broadcasting policy settings are a rather malformed creature of the analogue era. Too much of our current policy was born in the Rip Van Winkle days of Australian public policy. Then spectrum capacity was technically limited, and governments believed the best way to manage the economy was to anoint a small number of winners in return for them accepting some regulatory obligations. The cost of these obligations to the networks was one, of course, much less than the value of the swag full of benefits that protectionism bestowed upon them. This approach has not served the interests of Australian consumers. Australians were denied additional choice of channels for a couple of decades as subscription television was kept out of the Australian market. They were denied a fourth free-to-air channel because of the prohibition on a new free-to-air commercial network. They've suffered from the perverse operation of the longest anti-siphoning list in the world. They've endured the waste of assets, with 2 valuable blocks of broadcasting spectrum lying fallow for years. And our deployment of the new mobile broadband services of the future is behind other parts of the world, such as the United States. This is because we don't have the spectrum available, as it's still being used for something our grandparents called analogue transmission. When you stand back and look at the history of broadcasting policy, you scratch your head and worry about our country. For a country with much less than 2% of the world's population, easy access to some of the world's best ideas because of our good fortune of being able to speak English, and our broadly similar education and legal systems to the United States. And for a country connected to the fastest growing region of the world, you'd really think we would have had every incentive to have done better with our media policy. We should have taken the view of our Olympic athletes, which is, we're blessed, see how we can use that to make sure we're world leaders. When you look at broadcasting policy historically, it's clear that not enough people have seriously asked, how do we put in place world-class settings that put consumers first? How do we maximise investment and innovation? How do we maximise job creation? How do we maximise the creativity of Australians in ways other than just throwing public money at them? Instead, what we've had, as the Productivity Commission pointed out in its fine and enduringly relevant report of 2000, is media policy which, and I quote, reflects a history of political, technical, industrial, economic and social compromises. This legacy of quid pro quos has created a policy framework that is inward-looking, anti-competitive and restrictive. Now, I don't want to sound like Dr. Gloom on all of this. The government has, to its very great credit, set a firm analogue switch-off date. It has outlined a path to reclaim the huge amounts of public spectrum the Commonwealth loaned the networks for nothing to broadcast in digital and analogue simultaneously. Minister Conroy has also announced some sensible and modest changes to the anti-siphoning list, although there remain important details to bed down. And the government has said it will conduct a review, as confirmed this morning by the Minister, into the Broadcasting Services Act. We fully support each of these initiatives. We're hopeful that they represent a new page in our approach to broadcasting policy. On the review of media policy settings, I would like, if I may, to offer a few observations. The first, of course, is that in the same way that the digital economy does not respect ossified political structures and static business models, it does not have regard to all the neat distinctions we make in the Broadcasting Services Act. Neither does it have regard to the quid pro quos in media policy making that have been such a staple of our system. The second observation I would make, which flows from my first point as well as from the history of microeconomic reform in this country, is that the review should put the consumer and competition at the centre of its analysis. As the Keating government's review into national competition policy pointed out, the engine that drives efficiency is free and open competition. Competition is a positive force to assist economic growth and job creation. Given this, we read with more than a little alarm the draft terms of reference to the review, and I look forward to reading the full terms of reference that the Minister announced just a while ago. These talk about the review panel having regard to appropriate levels of competition. Now, I might be misreading the draft, but such language smacks of the bad old approach of overly managed competition and the anointing of winners, which has been repeatedly shown never to work. The third observation I would make is that the national broadcasters, and I don't know whether they're in there or not, but I believe that they must be included in any review of our regulatory settings. The ABC gets over $1 billion of public money. It gets access to public spectrum at no charge, and it is increasingly competing with every single person in this room, other than those of you who work for the national broadcasters. I say, if it has feathers and a bill, and it quacks, and it looks like a duck, and it walks like a duck, it is a duck, and should be in the review. The fourth observation I would make is that the anti-siphoning scheme should also be included in the review, and I don't know if it is or not because I haven't seen the Minister's announcement. For reasons that remain unclear to us, the draft terms of reference documentation propose to exclude the anti-siphoning scheme. We disagree because, obviously, all media policy settings are linked. The media landscape is changing rapidly, and the scheme imposes significant limitations uniquely on our sector. How can you have a comprehensive review and leave out one of the critical policy and competition settings in the Act? We've respectfully made that point repeatedly to the government. The fifth observation I would make is that it's critical that the review look at copyright law. Much of our copyright law is unable to deal with the challenges of the digital age. And with the NBN, this problem is exacerbated. As I've said to colleagues at work, without copyright reform, the NBN is the equivalent of driving an armed truck into a jewellery store, shooting all the guards, and allowing the felons to make off with the entire store. I should note also that late last week, the Attorney-General said that he would provide the Australian Law Reform Commission with a reference on copyright. He said that this should not duplicate work done in the Convergence Review. Next to say, we support that approach. I'm not for a moment suggesting that companies don't also need to innovate in the way they provide their product to consumers to ensure that people have every incentive and encouragement to take our service. All of our innovation that I outlined earlier does exactly that. But we do also need laws that work to deter people from stealing our product and putting at risk the livelihoods of tens of thousands of Australians who work in creative industries. Finally, we fully support the proposal to include the licence fees paid by the networks as well as their use of spectrum in the review. Both are critical parts of the broadcasting ecosystem. It's interesting in light of all this to end by going back to where I started this speech with George Orwell and his novel 1984. The novel has been widely hailed as describing perfectly the nature of totalitarian rule, down to its most mundane detail. But when it comes to technology, and especially television, it seems Orwell's predictions were way wide of the mark. In Airstrip 1, in the year 1984, the party maintains its totalitarian rule, partly because the technology, in the form of the ubiquitous telescreen, works only one way. But in the Middle East in 2011, screen-based technology has allowed people to overthrow totalitarian regimes because it works two ways, and in the case of Twitter and Facebook, in an almost infinite number of ways. Instead of the party using television to control people by determining what was shown, propaganda, spying on people by means of the ubiquitous electronic eye, and telling them what to do via loudspeakers, in 2011, digital devices are used by the people to upload democratic content via YouTube, spy on their leaders' whereabouts by sending text messages to Al Jazeera, and to organise anti-government demonstrations through viral networking via Twitter and Facebook. While in no way analogous to Orwell's grim world in 1984, it wasn't that long ago that people were still arguing that television was a form of potential political and commercial control because the big networks alone controlled what we were able to watch. But as companies like Foxtel and multiple internet companies are now demonstrating, television is evolving in a way that allows the consumer to determine the content. It's a commercial application of technical and social trends that is literally changing our world. Digital technology has evolved to create a new form of democratic people power. No matter how hard they try, doddering governments can't protect themselves from that democratic power forever. And no matter how hard they try, doddering companies can't protect themselves from consumer power either. And competition-limiting regulations won't protect television networks forever. It's time to end protection and give power to television consumers.